Welcome to the Discover Montcalm podcast, where we're going to take a look at the communities, the businesses, the attractions, and the people that make up Montcalm County. Here is your podcast host, Dwayne Weed.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Discover Montcalm podcast, where we're looking at telling Montcalm County stories. I have Terri Legg from the United Way. You're the president of the United Way for Montcalm and Ionia Counties.
I sure am. Thanks for having me today.
Well, thank you for stopping by. Let's learn a little bit about you to get started.
All right, let's do it.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up and how did you come to this area?
Well, I say I'm a transplant to this area. I'm really from the St. John's area, so mid-Michigan, not much difference. But I've been in the Belding area for, 12 years now. I can't believe it's been that fast. But yeah, about 12 years, mostly at the United Way. I've been there for 7 years. So,
what is it about this area that you like?
it's home. I really like rural. That's where I grew up. I've worked in Lansing. I've worked in Grand Rapids. The pace is different. I'd rather be in a traffic jam with a combine than a traffic jam with cars. But it's home. I feel like people are a little more real in our community.
So throughout your life, if you could pick one person, what one person has influenced you the most and why?
Oh, this is an easy question. For me, it'd be my grandma. My grandmother was, she was a very strong woman who had 9 children, but she just really thought about how you present yourself and how you should look and how you should treat people. And to me, that's really important. I want to treat people the way I want to be treated, and so it would definitely have to be her.
Well, that's wonderful. Let's get right into why you came here today.
All right.
In an overview, what is the United Way?
Well, we're really complex, but in a nutshell, we're local. In Michigan, there's 32 United Ways, but what makes United Way very unique is that we're local to our community. So we look at what are the needs in our specific community and how can we impact those needs. The money that we raise at United Way, a lot of people know that we raise money as a nonprofit, but the money that we raise goes to fix local issues. We always focus in the area of health, education, financial stability, and basic needs. Our community members have told us repeatedly that basic needs are the most important. So we do a lot of work in Montcalm and Ionia County on food stability and housing. And those are probably our 2 prime focuses, with education and health coming afterwards. We also run a volunteer income tax assistance program that a lot of people know us for that. That's free tax assistance for those that make under $60,000 a year. So we do that as a way to help bring finances back into the community and to help save people from having to really spend a lot of money at tax preparers for small returns that they get back. That's where most people know us. But really, I'd say that United Way is a convener, and we bring people together, whether it's political, so legislative folks, municipalities, business owners, community members, to really identify what are the local issues and how can we make an impact.
You said something that I think a lot of people need to know. The money that you raise stays local.
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned that. The way that we receive our dollars is through community members. Most people know us through their workplaces, and traditionally that's where we've received a lot of our dollars, but we also get grant funding. So let's talk about our campaigns. We do our campaigns in a number of different ways, but the most is always in the fall, where workplaces, their employees are giving through their paychecks weekly or however they're paid. And usually they're giving between $1 and $5 per pay period. And those dollars, when you think about you giving $1 and me giving $1, it doesn't really feel like it's that much, but it's pre-tax dollars, so we don't really notice that it's coming out of our paycheck. But together, if we all were to give $1, it makes a huge amount. And we're able to use all that money that we raise in the community to fund nonprofits, to make sure our nonprofits are actual nonprofits doing the work and what they say. So we vet them to make sure that they're legal nonprofits, that their paperwork with the IRS has been completed correctly. We check their 990s to make sure they're spending their dollars appropriately. And we do that so that it makes giving for everyone else easy. If you give to us, you can be assured that 100% of those dollars are staying local to our community and to the cause that you want it to go to. That's really important to us. Another way that we do it is through various campaigns that we have throughout the year. We have a duck race, for example, where we're throwing ducks in the river in Belding on Labor Day, and the money that we raise from those ducks helps to provide food that we give away at the holiday time.
Okay.
Super fun program. And it's a duck raffle, so you can buy a duck with a good cause and know that the prizes that we give are great.
A lot of business and community involvement with
Yeah.
that as well.
Lots.
You were talking about how you collaborate with local nonprofits. I take it from your standpoint, that's an important aspect, is that you spread your wings. And you've mentioned Belding a few times. And for those that are watching, I know this is called Discover Montcalm. But however, in this case, you are Ionia and Montcalm counties.
Right.
You have your business is in Belding.
It just happens to be in
but
Belding.
you are servicing both of those counties.
Yeah. So the way our counties are made up, we're really a mirror of each other. We mirror each other in population. Roughly 64,000 people live in Montcalm and 64,000 live in Ionia County.
Okay.
Our agriculture is our main industry, followed by manufacturing. We, of course, have prisons are really strong, and education and hospitals are our main employers. The average amount of monies that people make are the same in both counties. And so when we look at the two counties, it makes it easier for us to make global impact or to make regional impact if we work with both counties together. So we can bring in more state funding because we're rural. We can get more grants.
So there's a bunch of advantages.
Yes,
there's
huge advantages.
to that. You've been there for, you said 7 years?
Yeah, 7 years.
So what was that, 2016?
16.
16? Okay. Since that time, is there a story or one thing that you could share that you went, I know I'm in the right place, I know I'm doing the right thing? Is there a story that you could share?
I can. When the pandemic hit, if you think back to 2020, that was a pretty scary time at the beginning of March. So for us, we were moving our building from, I don't know if anyone knows where we were at. We were in the middle of a cornfield out on 66 on the edge of the county. And we were moving into Belding at the beginning of March. Ironically, the very week that we were moving in to our new building was the week that the pandemic shut everybody down.
Okay.
Well, our phones had already, over the course of the last couple of years, had already been ringing for food assistance a lot. And once that pandemic happened, we needed to mobilize. And I think that's one of the great things about United Way is that we have a pulse on what's happening in the community. So for us to mobilize, we can mobilize just volunteers, but we can also mobilize community partners really quickly. It was on the 13th of March that we went into the state shutdown, but we also activated our emergency readiness campaign. And in that campaign, in 6 weeks, Montcalm and Ionia County residents raised over $500,000. We were also able to bring in 56 food trucks that came from Howard City to the little towns of Lake Odessa and Belding, or in Ionia County and everywhere in between.
Yeah, you mentioned when you first walked in the door, you said, during the pandemic, did you get involved? And I had done some stuff with the food truck here at Tri-County High School. So that I guess you and I had crossed paths at that point. And, so I remember that. I remember you coming and, setting up in the lines and helping people. It was quite amazing to watch and to see.
It was unbelievable. The response that we got in every single community was unprecedented for us. We had lines of cars that would line up 4 and 5 hours before our food trucks would arrive. That showed a need in Montcalm and Ionia County that I don't think people really realized. And it was everyday people that you see that needed help, because we weren't sure, when we were going to be able to go to a grocery store, how people were going to get paid. But we were able to not just wait, we acted immediately. And so those first food trucks came in on the 16th of March, just 3 days after we shut down. And they continued all through summer, and they went all the way into the fall. And so the fact that we were able to do that, just our little tiny rural community was able to raise that much money and be able to support that many people, was unbelievable to us.
We'll all remember that.
Right.
Like I remember where I was when the moon landing happened. I guess I'm that old.
Well, I always think of the space shuttle, so I
Okay,
got
the space shuttle.
Yep.
Okay, so there's always key pieces of history that happen, and we'll always remember that. You talked about the pandemic and how you came to bring that all together, but on a total normal, I don't know if that's such a thing. On a normal year, how do you prioritize the types of things that you do and get involved with?
Well, we really prioritize it based off of health, education, financial stability, and then our basic needs. We reach out to community partners, we survey our donors, and we ask them what's most important. It's a little too presumptuous for us to decide what's most important, so we ask the community, and that's what they tell us. One of the things that we make sure that we fund every single year is 211. So 211 is the help number that anybody can call. You just dial 211 for anything non-life-threatening. What we find is that most people don't plan for an emergency, and they don't know where to call when an emergency occurs. So let's say, I'm going to use a bad example, but let's say, heaven forbid, somebody in your family all of a sudden needs to have a wheelchair.
Okay.
You don't really think about that in advance of what am I going to do when I need a wheelchair.
Do I need a ramp? How do I get my house prepared?
Right.
And also the struggles of what you're going through because now that person needs it and they didn't before.
Right, and sometimes you don't even know what questions to ask when that happens. So if you call 211 and you need help with a ramp, they can help you with, here's who can do the ramp for you. But maybe you need to get your utilities paid for a while so that you can be able to afford the expenses that come with that situation. They would be able to help you with all the other programs and ask you questions about, do you have food assistance? Do you have this or that? And they can direct you as a one-point confidential, nobody knows that you called, to get to the help. And for most people, asking for help is such a hard thing.
Oh, we're prideful. Speaking of asking for help, you got the 211. How does somebody get in touch with your office?
So to get in touch with our office, our phone number is 616-794-9840. Our website is a great place to get information, and that is Live United, M for Montcalm, -I for Ionia.org.
Okay.
So that's a great place to go to get information as well.
It's been great talking, but for right now, we've got to take a short break and thank our sponsors. For business owners looking for a reliable and comprehensive technology partner, West Michigan Technology and Design Solutions is your perfect choice. From managed IT, website design, website hosting, and consulting services, West Michigan Technology and Design Solutions can be found at WMTDS.com or by calling 616-485-7600. Custom Design Solutions and Busy Bee Embroidery and Gifts is located at 2999 South Sheridan Road, just south of Stanton, and is your one-stop shop for your embroidery, vinyl, screen printing, and engraving needs. Go to cvsd.com or call 989-261-7446. Established in 1984, DW Video is your film and videotape transfer specialist. They design websites and business videos that tell and share your story. dwvideo.com, 231-250-9624. Now back to our podcast. Welcome back to the Discover Montcalm podcast. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can also go to discovermontcalmpodcast.com. check out all the episodes that are dealing with Montcalm County. I have Terri here from the United Way of Montcalm and Ionia Counties, and we've been discussing, who's the what United Way? Does the money stay here? And yes, it does. And some of the things that some stories that you've shared. What are some of the biggest challenges that you find as the president of United Way of Montcalm and Ionia County?
That's an interesting question. I have a couple things that come to mind. I'll tell you one that impacts our local office, and then I'll give you a countywide challenge. So in my office, we are a tiny staff, and I think people forget how tiny we are. We only have at most a staff of 4.
Okay.
And so people think that we have a staff of like 34. We are mighty and we do a lot of work, but sometimes the capacity just within our staff size limits us on what we can do. In the county, sometimes when I am at meetings, because I get the luxury of being able to have face-to-face conversations with policymakers, with CEOs, with all kinds of different people in our community. And what I often see is that there's a lot of entities that are duplicating work. And so for me, as a convener and having that unique lens of having both counties, to me, it's really how do we break those silos and how do we work better together? That's really important to me. And so an example of that is our housing work that we've been doing. I sat on both Economic Alliance councils and I listened to what employers are saying. I listened to what our school districts are saying. I see our 211 numbers show that housing is a huge, huge issue for us, but nobody was actively working in that space of housing. So United Way decided, our board decided that housing was a place that we wanted to work in. Not that we're experts in housing and not that we can solve housing, but we can bring people together to start talking about housing. So we, a couple years ago, commissioned the Upjohn Institute to do a housing study of Montcalm and Ionia Counties. And as of May of last year, they were able to tell us that we're 6,000 housing units short. That was as of May of last year, so I'm sure a year later, that number's probably...
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. I mean, I would have thought it would have been a few hundred, but
6,000 is a lot. They also told us, which we know this by driving around, but we don't know this. We didn't have the data to be able to try to get grant funding for our community. But most of our homes are homes that were built before 1973. And why is that important? Because homes that were built before the 70s probably have lead-based paint in them, and they probably have asbestos in them. And a lot of the money that's coming from the state is for weatherization and improvements in homes, but they are automatically disqualified because they have lead paint or asbestos. And so for our community, while there's lots of money available, we can't spend those dollars in those homes. And something like 70% of our houses were built before 1973. And so that's a really important point for us when we're talking with the governor's office or policymakers, like, hey, we need to try to change some of these policies. So we are having a housing conference this year, which will be our 4th housing conference. We've brought stakeholders together, we've brought developers, you name it, all different kinds of people that would work in the realm of housing. But we haven't been able to actually say, hey, we're 6,000 housing units short, how are we going to build? Having some homes built in Howard City or an apartment complex that goes up in Greenville with 100 apartments is fabulous. But when we need 6,000 as of a year ago, that's not going to help us get out of where we're going, the trajectory of where we're headed.
And that leads to homelessness.
It does.
That leads to other things that are beyond just having a home.
For sure.
What I'm noticing here today is that there's so much that you have your fingers in that we could probably chat for a long time and still be chatting.
For sure.
And I think what I'd like to do is maybe invite you back on a later episode and kind of bring us up to speed. But what are some of your short-term goals that your office in Montcalm, I mean, you talked about the housing.
Yes.
That's definitely one of your goals. Is there any other short-term goals that you guys are trying to get a hold of and try to solve or put the people into place to
Yeah,
solve the
we've got a
problem?
couple different things going on. So we have a group called Women United. That is a group of women who are coming together to do volunteer projects, and they volunteer for almost every nonprofit that we have. In our community, we're really unique because we only have one of anything. If you were to go to Grand Rapids, for example, they have many different agencies that work with homelessness. We have one.
Okay.
So one of the things that we're really trying to look at locally is our youth. There's no resources for youth homelessness. We did a survey 2 years ago that showed us that nearly a third of our kids are couch surfing, and that is also something that our schools are telling us. Now, we don't think of couch surfing as homeless because there's not somebody holding up a cardboard sign. But we don't have any resources for kids that helps with homelessness. And so we have been working very diligently with Montcalm and Ionia County schools with a homeless youth coordinator to really try to get the pulse on what does the real story look like? How do we dig behind the numbers that we're seeing and see if there's really a problem or if we need more supports in the schools? So that's one area that we're really focused in is homeless youth. Another area goes back to our food security. It's really important for us that we look at food when there's no supports. So during the summer, there's lots of supports for food. During the school year, there's lots of supports for food. But during the holidays, there's not. So we run a program called our Seasons of Caring programs.
Okay.
And we have holiday hope bags where we are packing 750 bags for our kiddos that's going home to food insecure kids across both counties. And then 300 bags of food that are going home to senior shut-ins. And just trying to help make sure that our community has the food that they need. That's really important to us. So that program alone is about $40,000 that we have to raise and collect food to go in these bags that go out in the beginning of December.
It's amazing everything that you have your fingers in. How does somebody give? How can somebody give to the organization?
That is a great question. There's so many ways that people can give. People can give their time by volunteering. On our website, we have the volunteer center for the entire both counties. You can look up any volunteer opportunity for our nonprofits. They're all out there. I think there's 35 agencies that you can look up what are current volunteer opportunities. People can give cash. They can donate through our workplace campaigns. They can donate through any of our mini campaigns. People could donate stocks. People could give through the required minimum distributions for their IRAs, and we get a lot of people that donate that way. Sometimes our gifts are very restricted and they are to a very specific project, and that is perfectly fine.
So if you've got something that is near and dear to your heart, just get in contact with you and make it happen.
Yeah, and a lot of times because we are also the ones that vet the nonprofits, you can designate your gift to a nonprofit as well, and we make sure that that gift is spent the way that it's designated. So one of the programs that we do with our schools, again, I think I mentioned we do a lot with our schools, but we do because that's a great way to get out to our parents. But we have a project called our Period Poverty Project, where we're providing feminine hygiene products to all of our upper elementary, middle school, and high schools. And that's the number one reason that girls miss school is because of their menstrual cycle. And so we have some donors that is very passionate for them, and they only give to the Period Project. And that's perfectly fine, where we have some that only give to our senior shut-ins. And again, that's perfectly fine.
Go where your heart is.
Yeah.
Go where your heart is. As we wrap this up, be a tour guide for a moment.
Okay.
Why should someone discover Montcalm County?
Oh my goodness. If you just drive through Montcalm County, I think we are so blessed where we live. I often joke coming from mid-Michigan where it's just, a giant cornfield and a wheat field, that we have such beauty in Montcalm County, whether it's the hills or the orchards or, I just think it's beautiful.
We have one or two lakes.
And one or two lakes. I was thinking on my drive here today how beautiful the sky is. And I think that's something that we really take advantage of, is how beautiful it is just outside your front door.
In closing, Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you, when you were coming here today, said if I could make sure that you talked on one thing? Did we miss anything today?
I think the only thing that people forget is that when we drive through our county to our home and our front door, we tend to drive the same path over and over, and we tend to have the same glasses on as we drive. So I would encourage people to take their lens off and look through different lenses and see that in our county, especially Montcalm County, nearly 50% of our residents are struggling to make ends meet. And that just means that they might not have savings when something bad were to happen or their car needs repaired. So it really does take us helping our neighbors. You never know who's in need. Most of our homeless in the two counties, you would never know they're homeless. They're showing up at work. They're dressed just like you and I are. They just don't have a place to rest their head at night. So I would encourage people to really look through different lenses and realize that every single person in our county, 1 in 2 of them are struggling. So just be mindful of that and maybe have a little more compassion towards each other.
One last time, how does somebody get in touch with you? Your phone number and your website.
Okay, website is the fastest. That's liveunitedm-i.org, or our phone number is 616-794-9840. And of course, we have a lot of people that reach out via Facebook. You can just Google United Way Montcalm Ionia Counties, and it will pop right up.
It pops up. Thank you so much for enlightening us on all the many things that you do. And I think that we still on the surface, we can probably still go deeper.
For sure.
But remember to buy and shop locally. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Discover Montcalm podcast.
Connect and subscribe to Discover Montcalm Podcast at discovermontcalmpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Discover Montcalm Podcast. To be featured in an upcoming show, contact Dwayne at 231-250-9624. Remember to subscribe at discovermontcalmpodcast.com.